in a spirit of celebration rather than mourning, because Jim's life was really one worth celebrating. I think we're all here with that intent. You all know him from different fields, and most of the people here are theatre people, because we do know other people. So, I'd like to welcome everyone. It's great to see almost a full house here this afternoon. It really is wonderful. We're mourning our loss, but we're celebrating the life of James Bruce, the wonderful life it was. I'd like to welcome the members of Jim's family. It's great to see you. We've been working together, planning this. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your willingness for us to have this here this afternoon, because I know Jim's loss is very great for you, and as it is for all of us. So you're most welcome. Theatre, of course, was Jim's life. There's probably a lot of people here who don't really know the other big part of his life, which was the Scouting movement. And I'd like to welcome a number of representatives from the Scouts here today. Thank you. We all know that Jim was a part of the theatre from its very beginnings in 1963, and even a couple of years or a year before that. But he was in the Scouting movement for even longer, because he joined it when he was, what, 12 or 13? Yeah, so, and he was involved right through his life. Of course, it was a theatre activity for him as well, because he used to be very heavily involved in the gang show, the Kirrawee gang show. So it was just another add-on to his theatre life. Finally, I'd like to welcome all of Jim's other family, his theatre family. It's great to see so many present and past members, some who've just recently joined and haven't known Jim for all that long, but have recognised what a great contribution he makes to this theatre. And those of you from in the past, well, everyone who has worked in this theatre has come across Jim and been touched by him. So it's great to see you all here today. Jim, of course, was a very humble and self-effacing man. He preferred to work in the wings or in the tech box, at the stage manager's desk. He didn't make a song and dance about being the Senior Citizen of the Year in 2011 in Southern Shire. Mind you, when he was awarded that award, he was 64 years old. And that's my age now. I don't quite feel he didn't make a song and dance about being interviewed for the Sutherland Library Oral History Collection. If anyone wants to listen to that, to listen to Jim who's talking about his life, you just Google James Bruce Oral History and it will come up and you can listen to it. There's a transcript, a summary of it. And of course, after his passing, there was a beautiful article in the Leader, and his obituary was presented in State Parliament by the local member and also the Leader of the Opposition, Mark Speakman, and will be recorded there permanently. How many of us, when we go, will be spoken about in Parliament? No. For good reasons. For good reasons. Maybe some of us might. So it's great to see so many people here to celebrate that wonderful life. I'm going to talk a little bit about his theatre life, which was, of course, his whole adult life. Last year in December, we celebrated the 60th anniversary. A lot of you people were here for that. There was a focus on the history of the theatre, and the history of the theatre is, of course, the history of Jim Bruce's life, because he was here from the very beginning. He joined the theatre as a 15-year-old, before it was the Arts Theatre, and it was the Cronulla School of Arts Theatre Group then, and it was March 1962 that Jim made his stage debut in a play called Moon on a Rainbow Shore. 15 years old, and his character in the program was called Boy. That was his first and only appearance on stage. He very quickly realised, no, that's not for me. So from then on he remained behind the scenes. Another cast member from that same 1962 production, when he heard of Jim's death, wrote this about Jim. I do remember that once Jim took over the sound and lighting, we had no more worries. He wasn't shy, but certainly wasn't one to blow his own trumpet. Any community theatre is only as good as its members. Jim's commitment showed that he was one of the best. There's something about Jim that many years after we worked together, I still have good memories of him. That was written by a fellow called Barry Scaines, who was in the theatre group before it became the Arts Theatre, and then was in about 8 productions in the 1960s. He'd been living in England since then, for over 50 years, and he still remembered Jim and the impact he had on him. He would have been a little bit old, about 6 years older than Jim. So that's the kind of impact that he had on people. They remember him for a long, long time. Out in the foyer, some of you might have already seen it. I invite you all to look at the posters we've got up there. There's 2 posters, and one has a lot of the Facebook comments that people made when we posted on our Facebook page about Jim's death. A lot of beautiful comments. So that again shows you just how many people were touched by Jim. I'll read you just one of those posts, and this is from a fellow called Anthony Babici, who was here in the early 1970s. He wrote, "Vale, Jim. He was my mentor at Arts Theatre Cronulla 1971-72. He taught me stage management and lighting and sound operation and encouraged me to design productions, 3 of which I did for the Arts Theatre before studying design at NIDA and 45 years in professional theatre and 20 years teaching at NIDA. He was a great guy, great company, totally dedicated to the theatre. Bless him." Isn't that beautiful? That someone remembers that, not just influence, but changed his whole life. It taught him what eventually became his whole career, and he remembered that influence. When the Cronulla Theatre Group became the Arts Theatre in 1963, Jim was the stage manager for the very first production. And he was the stage manager for the second production, and he was only 17. He stage managed many productions, including the very last production before he died. His first lighting design credit was in a play called Me and My Girl in 1965. And he designed the lights for nearly every production we have done since then. That's phenomenal. Almost 60 years in this one place designing the lights. He also designed sets. The first program that I could find that had him credited as a set designer was in 1975, a play called Ring Round the Moon. And from then on he designed dozens of sets. He also directed 12 productions, starting with Laughter in the Dark in 1975, and his last production was Dial M for Murder 2 years ago. Everyone who's been involved with the theatre over the last 60 years has known Jim. And for me personally, it's been one of the great privileges of my life to have known him. And to have worked so closely with him over the past 36 years in every production I've been involved in. So many of his sets that he designed were works of art, and the lighting he designed complemented them perfectly. It's an honour for me when he told me very often, as he would tell anyone who had ears, that his favourite production in the theatre was Amadeus. Out in the foyer there are 2 photo albums on one of the windowsills of many of his set designs. So if you get a chance, just flick through them and have a look at them. So many of them are beautiful. What he did was to bring his professional knowledge and an artistry that not many of us have. And he brought it to a degree that will be very hard to match in the future. It's very hard for me to express how much I missed Jim. It wasn't just his brilliant work behind the scenes. It was his presence here every time he came to the theatre, and everyone who comes to the theatre knows that. He would always be there. He'd be up his ladder, or he'd be up in the tech box, or he'd be at his table that he set up during rehearsals, watching every rehearsal so that he could plan the best way to design the lights for that production, or he would be just sitting there, ready to have a chat, whatever was bugging him politically. Or about development in Cronulla. I'd just like to say that our lives and the lives of the theatre, the life of the theatre, are so much poorer for Jim's passing. So thank you. speakers. Ian has, not getting you up on stage. Ian has written something from the family point of view about Jim, some things that we won't know. And Sayegh has very kindly agreed to read that. So, Anne?
This is from the Bruce family. Jim's family would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank Michael and the Cronulla Arts Theatre Committee for making the theatre available for our celebration of Jim's life. We were sure from the start that this was appropriate, as it was his true home for most of his life. Your generosity and support at this difficult time is more appreciated than you can know. We are also grateful to Mark Speakman, Peter and the staff at the Cronulla Electorate Office for the recognition of Jim's contribution to his community and to the Cronulla community itself for being his other family. James Ernest Bruce, known as Jim or Jimmy, was born in Hurstville on the 16th of January 1947 to Mavis and Ernie, and was the eldest of 4 children. His early years were spent in the Oakley area and then Bobbin Head before moving to Miranda in 1954. The family lived in a converted fibro single-car garage with the compulsory contemporary outdoor dunny. Ernie then built the house where the 4 siblings would spend their childhood years. Jim lived most of his life in the Sutherland Shire, the only one of his family to stay in the area. Jim, along with his brothers Alan and Ian, and his sister Moya, were raised in Miranda. In those days, this was in the bush, and the swamp that is now Gooley Bay was their playground. School holidays revolved around camping trips, and this instilled a love of nature and the outdoors in the family. Jim loved to take his van away to the bush, where he could manage to drag himself away from the theatre. Having said that, we have it on good authority that he worked on his set design plans in the campground. Jim loved his nieces and nephews, and likewise the next generation as they came along. He was particularly chuffed when Ian and Karen named their firstborn son James Bruce, who now is also known as Jim in some circles. Jim always signed Christmas and birthday cards with James Bruce the First. Jim joined the Scouts as a young boy and was associated with the Arts Theatre from the age of 14. These 2 things were to shape the person that he became and the life that he wanted to lead. Jim's life was interrupted when, at the age of 20, he was called up in the conscription lottery that was the Vietnam War. Although he wasn't involved in combat, the experience was a difficult one for the young Jimmy. He believed that he had been exposed to Agent Orange, but didn't reveal for many years that he had decided not to have children due to health concerns. When he returned, he and his comrades were left at Sydney Airport in the dead of night and left to find their own way home. This was a sign of the times, as frustrations towards an unpopular war were wrongly directed at the soldiers who had been forced to go to Vietnam. Jim never marched on Anzac Day or displayed his service medals, but we have them here today for all of you to see. The family has had great pleasure in reading the online comments from so many people who have been influenced by Jim over the years. Through the Cronulla Arts Theatre and the Kirrawee Gang Show, famous Jimmy quotes include, "Where's the gang? More smoke! That's all fucking wrong!" Please feel free to add to this list. Jim spent more time with his theatre family than anyone else. His mind was never far from the latest production, lighting or set design. We, his family, couldn't help him to sort out his car problems, computer and phone problems, or convince him to go to the dentist. Although he blissfully ignored these things, he would never ignore a call from the theatre, his first love. Jimmy had an easy smile and a laugh and a cheeky nature. His brothers will tell you that his sense of humour was influenced too much by The Goon Show and Monty Python when he was young. We will miss him terribly. We know how much he will be deeply missed and remembered by many, many people in Cronulla and the Sutherland Shire, as well as the performing arts community in Sydney. Thank you all from the bottom of our hearts.
Thanks, Anne. One of our members, long-term members, a fellow called Graham Egan, some of you might have heard of him. He's almost the opposite of Jim Bruce, where he likes to be behind the scenes. Graham is front and centre in the spotlight. Graham has penned his own little tribute because he was in many, many plays here, over 20 plays, and got to know him very well. Graham's overseas at the moment, so Shirley Miranda is going to read that.
I'm nowhere near as good as Graham because he could have climbed that and jumped it. I wonder why he's not here. He's mounted in Switzerland yodeling, probably singing Climb Every Mountain, which he probably has. But he really did love Jimmy for what he did at this theatre, and so I'm quite privileged to read what he said. It was 1985, my first show with the Arts Theatre, Habeas Corpus, directed by Joy Baker, one of our great directors. What about the set? Well, Jimmy came up with a design, a series of rostrums and otherwise empty set. How odd, I thought. Where were the walls and the doors and the sofa that seemed to be compulsory for all sets? The rostrums worked perfectly and showed that James Bruce knew a thing or two about theatre and set design. He would work furiously and frequently, whipping himself into a storm of anger and frustration before telling everyone to fuck off. And then storming out. No one batted an eye and even knew he would come back stomping in and pick up where he left off. After the show was over, everyone was left. It's common for theatres to leave a single light blazing on the stage. This is called the ghost light, and it's left on to enable the resident theatre ghosts to go around about their business. We don't need a ghost light. James is here and knows his way around here very well. His theatrical brilliance brings its own light. I've heard that James has been asked to direct and design the set of The Second Coming. It will be brilliant. I just hope those angels can cope with being told to get
We've had the family, we've had the theatre, and our final speaker this afternoon will be Bryan from the Scouts.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name's Bryan, and I'd like to share with you some of Jimmy's history with Scouts, and in particular, specifically the Gooley Gang Show. He was a Covenant Scout, and he was a leader for 3 years in the 1960s. But his longer and most significant contribution to Scouts was the Gooley Gang Show. Some of you may think of Scouts and Guides as lovers of outdoor pursuits, which we are. But Scouting is also about broad experiences in many facets of life, and gang shows provide an entree into performing arts, and it inspires many into a career in the performing arts. And I'd like to think that gang show maybe had some part in that in Jimmy's life. In 1961, at the Sutherland School of Arts, a young 14-year-old James Bruce stepped on the stage, and he continued being part of 21 shows until 2005. From 1971, Jimmy was involved in technical roles, designing lighting, managing the stage and designing sets. And from 1993, Jim was either the production co-director or the director of the show until about 2003. Thankfully, Jimmy didn't try to teach people how to sing, but he did have a clear vision of the shows and designed vivid lighting, magnificent, detailed and ingenious sets, which at times appeared to exceed the capabilities of the venue. The format of a gang show, if you haven't been to one, is of a variety or a view show. Song and dance, short skits. There can be more than 30 separate items, and for many years we performed in school halls and somehow managed to get an extensive number of sets, props, large cast on and off the stage. and part of that was all Jimmy's plan. In 1993, we hit the big time and we moved to Sutherland Entertainment Centre. However, unlike today's theatre, which is quite special, it was a concert hall back then. But, we were a theatre show, but Jimmy designed a proscenium arch and wings and converted Sutherland Entertainment Centre into a theatre. It was pretty amazing. If you can imagine, the whole thing has just become a stage. It also had running lights all around as well. Those light bulbs, yeah. This all took meticulous planning. He designed all the sets and the stage and the flyby layouts, and he did it all, I don't know if you've ever seen it, all on grid paper with measurements in feet and inches, which one day worked against him when one of our set people designed a 20-foot set and it was 20 metres high. We didn't fly it. But before you could program it, and before you could program in a computer, all the light and sound and set changes were itemised on the cue sheets. You can imagine every lighting change, every microphone on, off, every curtain, every fly set was all on a list and had a number. And he planned it all. That's not to say everything went right. It was an amateur show after all. Jimmy, and I cleaned this up when I wrote it down, but I'll say it the way he said it. Jimmy said, "Fuck no, it's all wrong." One of the tales, and you've already heard it, or heard the words "more smoke" tonight. One of the tales about Jimmy was about smoke, but not because he was a smoker. But one show he was unhappy with the previous night's performance, did not have sufficient smoke haze on the stage to get the lighting effect he wanted. Whilst the number in front of the curtain was on, he called down to the stage for more smoke. Despite the stage manager's protest, he called for more smoke, more smoke, more smoke. Smoke started leaking from the sides of the curtain. More smoke! It came down the cans. The curtain opened and in the pit the band and I were engulfed by ice and haze, pouring off the stage and into the audience who were similarly overcome. Not sure the lighting effect worked. In the 2000s we moved to the Miranda Theatre at Hurstville. I retired from being in the pit and ended up backstage. I was working on the flies. And Jimmy was a great teacher. He imparted his knowledge, he told me how to do things, he shared his knowledge experiences, and also all the little tricks. And the Hurstville Theatre was a mixture of lift mechanisms that were taken from old Sydney theatres as they closed down. And the side effect was that all the cradles had different size weights and sizings, and it was all very interesting. And Jimmy would share that this one's from the old Regent Theatre, this one's from His Majesty's Theatre, and he touched them as if they imparted memories of all the shows that happened in the past. In the 1995 game show program, which I've got here, Jimmy wrote about the show's founder. My first show on stage was in the 1961 Kerry game show. It was a magical experience, with Davo directing, and now we've come full circle with me directing him in his final show. Thanks, Davo, for bringing a bit of magic to my life over the past 34 years. We'd just like to say thanks to Jeannie, who cast the same magic for us and many, many other scouts and guides involved in the show. Thank you.
Does anyone else protect the theme development? things. I'll put this out in the foyer. This is a collage of sets that Jim designed for the theatre. This was presented to Jim by the theatre at our 40th anniversary, 21 years ago. So, of course, there's another 80 productions after this that Jim's been involved with. And the other thing is, I mentioned the poster out in the foyer with all the Facebook posts. There's another poster that has some postcards that Jim sent to the theatre on his big European trip in 1974. And when he's away, who does he write to? He writes to the theatre. And he welcomes, one of them says, greetings to front of house, techies, and he outlines all of the theatres he's been to. And also on that are a number of photos that I had never seen before, sent to me by David Cashman, and of Jim, mostly in his younger years and in his scouting life. So thanks, David, for that. And when you get a chance, have a look at those as well. They're really nice. Okay, thanks everyone.